Hi, my name is Rob from Sony. I'm here today to talk about how to take your camera off auto and use all of the different modes that are on the camera. Now the thing to remember is you can always put your camera on auto. You can always put it on auto, push the button, take the picture. You can always do that, so if you're stuck, if you're confused, you can always go on auto. The advantage of auto is it sets the focus, the aperture, the shutter speed, and the ISO. It does everything automatically. Now the first step of getting off auto and taking more control of the camera is to put it on P program. And what that does, you just flip the switch, put it on program. The first thing I would do is set the ISO. I'm going to set that myself. On auto, it sets the ISO. On program, I take control and I set the ISO. So I set the ISO. You've got a bunch of different settings. If you're outdoors, I would use 200. If you're indoors in a darker room, I would use 1600. There's a couple other choices in there as well, but 200 for outdoor, 1600 for indoors. That sets the sensitivity of the sensor. The next thing on program, the shutter speed and the aperture are set by the computer and the camera. So I've taken a bit of control, but the camera is still setting the main functions. The focus is automatic, the aperture is automatic, and the shutter speed is automatic on program mode. The next mode is Aperture Priority. On Aperture Priority, I'm controlling the aperture of the camera. So if I set it to 5.6, all the pictures are going to be taken at 5.6. The computer and the camera is going to pick the correct shutter speed. That allows me to decide what aperture I want to use. Do I want shallow depth of field? Do I want a lot of depth of field? I'm in control of the aperture and the look of the picture. Aperture Priority. Shutter Priority, S on the camera, lets me pick the shutter speed. Again, I've taken control. I'm setting the shutter speed to where I want. If it's a picture of a waterfall cascading down a hill, I can set it to 1 second and have all that water blurry and look dreamlike. The computer in the camera will set it to the right aperture. If I'm shooting auto racing, I can set the shutter speed to 2,000th of a second, and the computer and the camera will give me the right f-stop or aperture. So on Shutter Priority, I'm picking the shutter and it's doing the rest. The next setting is manual, where I'm setting both the shutter speed and the aperture. I use the meter in the camera to give me an idea of what the correct exposure would be, but I've taken full control now and I'm setting the shutter speed, the aperture, and controlling how the image is going to look. When you're on Shutter Priority or Aperture Priority, use the dial in the front to control it. When you're on Aperture Priority, this dial sets it to the aperture that you want. The computer does the rest. In Shutter Priority mode, this sets the shutter speed to where you want, and again, the computer inside the camera does the rest of the exposure.